Welcome to No Guts, No Glory.
Welcome with special guest Stu in.
Stu
Hi.
Berger. How are you, Stu?
Hello.
Good to have you, mate.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Always lovely to have you on board.
Very happy to be here.
Just chatting about previous STDs there for everyone who's just joined.
Yeah, that was part of the
standard transient design. Is
Yeah,
that? Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
made that one
Exactly right. So
Pretty good.
It's always good to have you on board. I
you.
love the dynamic of this podcast that I have here with my main man, but always nice every now and to pepper it up a little bit with the likes of yourself. So again, good to have you on board, buddy.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Got to say, did a job for you last week that you mixed, and it was fucking phenomenal. So if anyone's out there watching or listening to a podcast, I don't like to. I mean, I know a lot of people who are great, and I don't like to pay favourites in particular. But let me tell you, Stu is so fucking all over his shit, and is. If you guys are stuck for something and you want to get an excellent like a really good bang for the buck, go fucking check him out because his stuff is great. And the reason I say that is not because I need a new best friend. I don't need to piss in your pocket. But what I find, the way I rate any engineer when I work on a mix is if I work on something and it's like, oh, okay, I don't have to actually get an aneurysm today. I'm going to be able to do what I'm meant to do, which ironically is not that much. Just kind of bring out more what's good and present, and so it presents well and it'll translate well. Then everything above and beyond that is all subjective. So when those kind of situations come through, then I pay attention to the engineer and I'm like, oh wow, and quite often I will find out who it is and I want to call them just to give them props because it's important, I think, to give people credit where credit's due. Mm-hmm. So yeah, man. So again, well done on that. And seriously, people, I don't get in payment for endorsement. I don't get kickbacks. I don't get shit. Yes, I do work for these guys when the budget's there. In the interest of full transparency and disclosure. But I don't. If I'm ever out there and I'm ever giving anyone props, it's because I mean it. It's not because I've got any kickback or any other. There's no agenda and there's nothing directly coming my way and there's no agreement in place. So just thought I'd put that on the record so you fuckers know that we're keeping it real.
Yeah, nice. And even on that, there was a post. I'm glad you brought it up because you put up a post. It was either yesterday or today with a fucking dope analogy about what you do and what people expect of the mastering process by the time it gets to you. And it was someone giving you a fucking Jack Daniels and Coke and going, here, remove the fucking Coke from it without touching and just leaving a pure shot of Jack Daniels there.
Yeah.
Which is essentially for people who, there's a lot of not a lot, for some people mixing and mastering has this big fucking dark art sense to it. They don't really know what it does. But for that, just clearing that line of the mix engineer comes in and they're the ones handling all the little individual stems.
You could say
they
they're
can
the
control
distillery.
everything. You could indeed.
The distillery in this process.
But by the time it gets to you, you just get a fucking stereo mix. So, you can't actually get into the finer details when... So the thing is, that analogy was super good and I thought it made it really clear.
And this is why also I have so much respect. It's so much respect for mix engineers, and I'm glad we've actually opened up the podcast. Starting off by giving Stu props, and in a broader sense, giving props to the mixing community because in my world, so much of it depends on that. And yes, there is some confusion between the mixing process and the mastering process, and often it's said that mixing is about the trees and mastering is about the forest. It's the overall thing, What people don't realise, why I hold mix engineers in such high esteem is because when you think about the differences between the two jobs and two roles, is that Stu and people, and his brethren have got to deal with so many more decisions. When it comes to me, like you said, it's a stereo mix. There's a left and a right channel. Everything I do has a consequence over the whole song. There are certain things you can do and tricks you can pull in certain situations, but you can't rely on that, and that's why it needs to go a step back. So Stu, for example, I have a limited amount of decision making to make. Stu and other mix engineers, just on one track, on one element of the mix, they've got to think about, all right, the EQ of the track, compression of the track. Do they EQ before the compression? Do they compress before the EQ? Do they how wet or how dry? How much do they commit? Do they send it off to a subgroup here or do they not send it to a subgroup? Then there's a panning decision to be made. Now, already you've got 6 or 7 decisions on one element of the mix. You multiply that out 20, 30, 40, 60, 80 fucking times, right?
Yep.
And you can see already you potentially can get yourself into some real head fuckery. Whereas I don't have
absolutely,
anywhere
yeah.
near that. I've got nowhere near that.
And it's even on the contrary, like you can, and that's where like I remember even myself when I started to get into fucking mixing, you overdo shit because you've got all these options. You're like, fuck, I'll group all these fucking drums. These are now my fucking sub bus, and this goes here, and you just because there's so many fucking options, so you end up overdoing shit because well, one, you haven't really been around people to draw the line and be like, cool, that's done. That's a good sound. That's all you need. So you keep overcooking shit. But then even on the other side, you look at something like the projects, like a finished project when he's done working with it. And it's like a well-scripted movie. Like, this part flows with that, and then it fucking comes, like, it's all where it should be, and it's just like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
It's fucking sick.
I like to, I mean, as much as anyone should continue to be learning forever throughout your life, but I'm always watching how the masters do it. And, you know, one person that I really have a lot of respect for is Eric Valentine, who's worked on, you know, Queens of the Stone Age and, you know, Taking Back Sunday and Slash, heaps of monsters. And his favourite thing with a drum recording is one mic, you know. So, and he's a massive, you know, you don't need 12 mics on a drum kit to get a good sound. Like, if you can get one microphone to capture the drums the way that they sound in that room and give them their own vibe, like, why shouldn't you? And that's that's the approach that I like to think of. One, I like to have the end product in mind. So I'll hear a song, and whether it's unmixed or semi-mixed or just recorded, whatever it is, I'm picturing how I think it should sound at the end. And you have to make these little tiny decisions just bit by bit. And is this getting me a step closer to that end product? Or am I lost in it? You know, like there's so many times in the past where you can get stuck on something, you know, spend half an hour on just one thing, and you're like, what am I doing? Is this the actual, what am I doing here? You have to constantly take a step back and go, fuck, am I doing what I need to be doing right now? Is this the right step for this? You know, there's so much, and you're right, there's a lot of thinking.
One other thing that I remember seeing, and his name escapes me now, and I really hope it comes to me because he deserves to get the credit. But he talks about a process of mixing where a lot of people are getting so much into the one thing, whereas he just does it as you go along. So Bob Clearmountain. So Bob Clearmountain, he's done a couple of records. He's a kid to watch out for. He's on the rise, ladies and gentlemen.
He's an up and comer.
So keep an eye out for him. I think he's going to do some things. I don't have a crystal ball. Don't quote me. But So Bob Clearmountain talks about pretty much what you're talking about, which is not to get overly, bogged down into the stuff, and just, like if you're gonna work on an element of a mix, work on it in the context of the whole song playing. So because you may solo that track, let's say it sounds perfect in the whole song, and then you solo that. It may sound wrong on its own, but within the mix, it's perfect.
100%.
So, and it kind of seems a bit counterintuitive because people are always like, let's get that sounding absolutely amazing.
Pristine.
But all these amazing, perfectly individually captured sounds collectively.
Yep.
You know, it's that whole thing of like a champion team will always beat a team of champions. Yeah. So,
and you can think about that in terms of like jobs that you're doing. Like you can take a step back and go, even let's say like, you know, if you're mixing one song that's on an album, does that work in the context of an album? And then you can take a step back and say, me working with this band, is that where I want to be at this point in my career? Every little thing like that. And you can kind of analyze things that in that way rather than trying to, get stuck on every little decision that you make when you really should just be thinking about, is this taking me a step closer to where I want to be?
Having one eye on the macro as well as focusing on the micro when needed.
I've got a question for you, Stu, and that is, do you have a preference for mixing records that you tracked yourself or are you comfortable with getting other people's sessions in? And if so, and or if you don't, when that does happen, what are the things? Because some people, for example, might be watching and listening, may be doing their own recordings. A lot of people tend to do that, and might want to outsource a mix engineer.
Totally.
Which I think is a very, very clever thing to do. So if someone's thinking about, first of all, let me know, do you have a preference for tracking your own stuff? And when you're getting stuff from others, what are the things that you find that make your job harder? What are the things people can do to make the job easier for you? In that respect.
I enjoy challenges, so I like mixing stuff that other people have recorded. It's like it's fun because you get these things that you don't expect. Like if I had tracked an album or a song, you know, I would do things a specific way. I would mic a drum kit a certain way. I would mic a guitar amp to have a specific sound. You know, you might receive all of these multi-tracks and kind of go, wow, I would never have put that effect on that vocal or, you know, something like that. I would never have made the guitar sound like that. But hey, if this is kind of the vision that the band has, I'll just try and make that as good as it possibly can. So I really like the challenge of mixing other people's stuff. I think it's fun. Obviously, if I've recorded my own stuff, then kind of making my own job easier as I go along, because again, I'm having that end goal in mind. I'm picturing how it's going to sound at the end of the mix at the start of the recording.
That's a big thing. And I was going to ask you if you do that, because that was one thing when I...
Hang on, let him finish. Answering.
Go back, sorry.
Sorry, mate, let him finish.
So either way, I'm happy. But things that make my job easier are things like, you know, something as simple as naming the tracks.
Clear labeling. Yeah.
You know, you might get something that says like, you know, really oddly named stuff. Yeah.
Like Second Take or something, or just something obscure that has nothing to... Yeah.
Yeah, I'd much rather just have like vocal chorus, vocal verse, lead vocal, you know, lead guitar, rhythm guitar. I don't need to know anything else, just as long as it's, you know, if it's got drums at the start of the name, then snare, even that, dragging it into the session, it'll all be there under drums, you know, because I use Studio One. A lot of people use Pro Tools or Logic. So a lot of time when I'm importing sessions, I'm importing to a program that not many people use. It's getting better and more people are finding out about it. It's a machine. It's like a beast. It's got all the best parts of all DAWs in one, in my opinion. That's why I use it.
So you're an early adopter of it. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Cool.
I've been using it for 5 or 6 years. I love it. So yeah, I'm importing tracks. I'm not importing sessions. So I'm not opening a session that someone's worked on.
Right.
I'm looking at stems.
Got it.
So the clear labeling is a big thing. That just means that I don't have to spend an extra 10, 15 minutes fucking organising the track.
So you won't get like a session that's got, you know, 70 tracks and shit. You just say, hey guys, you need to clean this up into 8 stems, or you might say, if you can make these stems for me.
Depending on what the tracking process is, I like to have things that sound different on their own channels.
Right.
So whether that's, you know, if you've got 2 different kick drums, have them on separate channels. Don't have them on the one thing, because I can't individually EQ them and compress them and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you've mixed them to a bus yourself and you like the way that bus sounds, export that as well. I guess making sure that it's as easy for the mix engineer as it can be. So
make it tidy, make it neat.
Yeah.
Take out all the fluff and all the other shit that isn't going to be in there.
If you've got mono files, keep them mono. Don't bounce them as stereo, because you don't know whether that has stereo information on it. You know, you might have a lead vocal that's captured as a mono track, which has, unless you've used 2 microphones, which is not the case most of the time. There's no point in bouncing it in stereo, because then you are confused with how you need to mix it and stuff. So little things like that.
Cool, man. That's good. So, bro.
No, you're good. So I was going to say, one of the things, you say you have the idea of the finished track you want to get to.
Yeah.
if you're recording it before the recording process, once you've heard
Yeah.
the song, you know kind of the realm you're going to get to.
Yes.
I know when I never had that in mind. I would just fuck around and play with shit.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is
yeah,
why, like,
yeah.
you saw some of my sessions, how
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
how stupid they get.
Yeah. 5
Because I
different
didn't,
snares.
like,
Yep.
I didn't have that end journey in mind. So when you're mastering, is that similar? When you hear something, you're like, fuck, okay, I know what I need to do with this? Or is there still a little of fucking working around?
There's I've often described my job as being a facilitator that helps a client or artist realise their vision for their art. So part of, I think, the gig of mastering is listening to a song, throwing it up on the speakers and going, oh, I get it. That you have an empathy with the client, the artist, in terms of where they want to go, and so you know, okay, I know what I need to do to help get it to that point. And so, now having said that, it shouldn't be too hard to do because, you know, a mixing. I always say to people, track like there's no mixing, mix like there's no mastering. So when it gets to me, it's almost like it should be pretty obvious of this is the vibe. You know, they're going for a Blink 182 vibe. You know, they're going for a fucking old school vintage vibe. You know, they're going for a bluesy, more guttural vibe. This is a more lo-fi kind of vibe. So it's going to be pretty obvious. And then it's just a matter of, okay, I get it. I know where we need to go. What can I do to help enhance and bring the qualities of that vibe more to the fore, so it sounds more finished and complete and ready to go. Still maintain the integrity. Still maintain everything about it. So, you know, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. But so yeah, there you are able to see the vision, but you're not. You know, it's not like, you know, starting from scratch and having this grand vision that you're working towards. It's just that you know. So
Do you get some bizarre requests? Like, do you get people that say, "Can you just chuck a whole bunch of distortion on it," or something bizarre like that? Where it's like, I mean, I can, but why would you want me to, sort of thing?
Every now and again, someone might ask, "Oh, can we just try and put a tiny bit of reverb on the track?" And you know, that sort of thing does happen. Some master engineers have been requested to do that. I get a lot of requests for stem mastering, and that's not my jam. I don't do it because the way I see it is, look, if there's, you guys do mastering here yourselves, right? And you do a damn good job of it, and you provide an excellent service for your clients. And there's a lot of people out there that do that kind of thing. You know, there's no law that says you have to be qualified or anything like that. But if there's only one reason why I would, you know, want to justify my existence in the ecosystem is purely because, you know, a master engineer is a third party objective, you know, person, and you can only listen to a song for the first time once. And I'm trying to get that feeling of Johnny Punchclock when he hits the play button. So when it comes to stems, I understand the advantage that it provides, and it provides it's kind of that in between of mixing and then mastering, and you can kind of do some cool shit. But I don't want the responsibility of having to work out, you know, the ride of the vocal take or things that are the producer and the artist, the decision making. And I, you know, and if we start getting into that, as cool as it can be, after a while, after 30 listens, then I'm going to have a situation of listening, you know, being with my client and saying, well, I don't know, what do you think? And they're going, well, I don't know, what do you think? And then we get into this thing which kind of defeats the purpose of it. Having said that, you know, I'm not a bloke who, as old school as I may be, and respecting the traditions of mastering, things evolve. So stem mastering, you know, I can't hold back the fucking tide with my finger. So this may be a case of, you know what, old man, you know, in your day, this is how they did it. And because back in the old days when I started, mastering was just a transfer. Really, that's all it was. It was like, here's the tape, here's the lacquer, little bit of processing in between, just a little bit. Whereas now we've got so much more processing between the source and the destination. So who's to say that 20 years from now, mixing and mastering may actually become a combined thing as part of the natural evolution with technology, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? So I think that while I don't entertain that sort of thing, at my place, I've got Hooves down there who is, you know, he's a younger guy. He's grown up in an era of stem mastering's the thing. This is how we roll. This is our jam. And he can provide that service, and so we as a business, I can say, look, I don't do it, but I'm not going to sit and poo-poo the idea. You know, I'm not going to yuck someone else's yum, and say, well, I don't do it, but you know what? I've got a dude who gets it, and he's good at it, and he can do it for you. You with me? So
I kind of see, like, to me as a mix engineer, I'll tell you right now, I have enough respect for mastering engineers that have spent their whole life doing that as their job to know that I'm not the best person to master it. So while I can master something, I will always suggest to the client that you should go to a mastering engineer. For those reasons, one, you've got the years of experience. Two, you've got the third person as someone who's listening it with fresh ears. And also that all your gear is made for mastering.
Yeah, there's the gear, the room, those things are huge fucking parts of the equation.
It's just such a big piece of the puzzle that adds so much unexpectedly. For people that don't know about it and they hear an unmastered track to master track, they'd be like, fuck, you know, if they didn't know. People that know should also understand that. And for me as a mix engineer, if I send, stems that need to be mastered, to me, that's me not doing my job. That's how I see it. So hopefully when I send something to a master engineer, I'm like, I've done my job to the point where all that person needs is the stereo track.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. No.
You can send different mixes, like a vocal down mix or, a vocal up mix or something like that.
That's why I circumvent that issue. I just tell clients if there's any particular points of the mix that they're a little uncertain about, then, as you said, put up the vocal up and the vocal down. And the fanciest you'll ever get is maybe a situation. It's mainly happened maybe less than a handful of times in my career where there's been a vocal up and a vocal down version or a kick up or kick down. But the situation is, you know what? The vocal up version sounds better in the choruses and the vocal down sounds better in the fucking verses. So we'll just chop the choruses in. Yep. And that's about as fancy as it'll ever get for me. But as I said, I'm open to the idea of doing that. And man, it's interesting. I think one of the things I really dislike, and I have for many, many years, I've really hated the whole idea of this myth of the black art and this perpetuation of it to scare people. Because what we've seen in the last 25 years is we've seen the mixing industry and the traditional studio business pretty much, change. It's just changed. It's now a completely different animal. And so the next area that really potentially can be swallowed up by the prosumer, by the end user, by the artists themselves, as part of being, being able to do a DIY and do it well, is mastering. And so there's a little bit of fear within the community. Thankfully, there are enough people who, like yourself, Stu, understand the process, respect the process, because the last thing I want to be doing, and I don't do, is I don't want to have to sell myself to anyone about what I do. I want to deal with people that actually get what I do, or if you get people that are a little uncertain, you can maybe help explain it to them. But, because people love to buy, but no one wants to be sold to. So I think if people have to start pushing themselves that way, then you're on the back foot straight away. So thankfully there are enough people in for me, who come, they appreciate what they do, or what I do. They're prepared to pay a certain amount to get, to get something in return, and they're my peoples, and I'm happy to stick with them. But it certainly shouldn't stop anyone from doing it. One of the reasons I do these workshops is I want musicians, I want people to understand what I do. I want to open the doors. I want to take away the mystery, because the more they understand about what I can achieve and, more importantly, what I can't achieve, then they're going to be able to go back and make better records. And it also allows for me to build and foster relationships with people as well. So why shouldn't you be able to say, I want to knock up a master just to hear it sounds in my car, just to give me something. Totally. Why shouldn't you have those rudimentary skills? It's like, I can fucking make a great omelette, but you know what? Because every now and again when I got money or the occasion, I'll go to a cafe and I'll get someone else to do it, because they're just going to do it that little bit better. But he's not going to get fucked off at me when I go home and do my own things. So, you fucking asshole, how dare you fucking scramble your own eggs?
That's mad.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I had another thought there when you were saying back in the day when you'd translate, like, you had the fucking tape and the lacquer, and that was your job was in between that. Do you think as the end product has changed, how consumers listen and consume music, as that changes and becomes more digital, do you think that's got a direct relation with how the mastering role changes over time?
I think one of the constants and one of the outcomes you want in mastering is this thing called translation. It's got to sit well regardless of where it gets played. Now, yes, we have now more and more people listening on mobile devices and on you know, the little
Earbuds.
those little earbuds and whatnot. But people still, people still play stuff on stereos at home, smaller stereos. It's got to wherever it gets played, be it the radio, be it in a club system, be it in the car, be it a ghetto blaster, be it on a little USB Bluetooth speaker. It's still got to sound good, and that hasn't changed, and that never will change.
Yep.
A good sounding record is a good sounding record. Like a good song will always be a good song, regardless of whether it came on vinyl, a CD, 8-track tape, reel to reel.
Yep.
It's still good.
Yeah.
So some people, some engineers may have specific things about. I mean, there's been a little hoo-ha around the streaming services and like, oh, we need to do it this way and that way. Look, I'm not a technical person. I don't understand it. I just know what sounds good, and if it sounds good, it'll sound good. The only time there's any consideration where we need to make some change, and not always, but quite often it's at least it's something that needs to be considered, is when it goes to vinyl, because of the format and the limitations of that format and what it can and what it can't handle. And again, depending on the content, the length of the side, the speed, 7-inch, 12, all these, again, there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. But other than that, man, ones and zeros are ones and zeros. And that's not going to change anything. So I for people that, one of the things some engineers do it, and it really pisses me off, and they used to do it back in the day where they would advertise as, we are the guys that can make your shit sound amazing on radio. They wanted to, they had the fucking magic sauce. And it was, and again, playing on the fear of people, the black art, we don't understand this thing, oh shit, we better go and see this guy. Similar kind of thing now with mastering for iTunes. Now you have to be qualified. I mean, I don't buy into that sort of bullshit, but again, for business and the interest of fucking having there for people that want it, Adam Dempsey is the iTunes guy who's certified and all that. But the reality of iTunes mastering is what? It's just dropping the fucking ceiling down a dB so it doesn't clip their converters. And people are going to go and charge for shit like that. It's like, it's a fucking raw. Just like people saying, we're going to master for radio. Well, guess what? Radio is a format that every station sounds different. It's always in a state of flux. So how am I going to predict, okay, I'm mastering, Stu sent me this Lemon Days track. Okay, how's it going to sound on fucking Triple J in fucking Broken Hill, or in Sydney, or in Blacktown, or in, South Yarra? Like, it all's different. And I worked in radio long enough to see that radio techs are constantly tweaking their sound all the time because they're competing with each other to be the loudest and the things to get more advertising bucks. So just make it sound fucking good. That's the fucking golden rule. Make it sound good, and you got nothing to fucking worry about.
What you were saying before about people don't want to be sold to, I wanted to see what you guys' thoughts were about, obviously, what your musical taste is completely subjective, person to person. But really, the band, the mix engineer, the mastering engineer, their products should sell themselves. I think, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. You can tell whether something's subjectively good or objectively good or objectively bad. So, a band that people want to listen to, they have something about them that is good. A mix engineer that does a good job is good for a reason, and people might listen to their stuff and go, that's shit, I hate the way they do that. But if a lot of people are going to them, there's a reason why they're good. I don't know, what do you guys reckon about that?
I reckon it's interesting. I reckon before that, there is the conversation of what's the purpose of this. Because if the purpose of, say, the record is just to capture this band or this group of buddies at that point in time, and they've really had that honest chat and they're going, we don't give a fuck about radio or commercials. Like, dude, we're just friends who play in a band and this is the fucking song we wrote. Then it's completely about them. And then the subjective, whether this was good, bad, is this going to fit on commercial radio? Can a fucking radio plugger do their job? All of that industry side of it gets taken out because if the actual purpose is to serve them. If it comes to you from, say, a fucking A&R and they're going, these are the plans. We need this fucking track to come out. This is going to be the lead single. We're going to follow up with this. They've got a campaign. Now there's other things in play. Now it's not just satisfying their fucking taste of going, we wanted to capture this. It's going, we want to generate income off this. That's the bottom line is we want this to succeed in the music industry. We want to either generate awareness, but really we want to generate money in some capacity. And then these questions can start to get answered. And then even I can't remember the producer who worked with think it was like the used or Slipknot or something. Used to throw shit at him.
Yeah, John Feldman.
Yeah, like
used to throw stuff at the used.
like used to throw shit until they
make them
get
angry.
fucking angry, and then what you capture is like fucking it's energy. Like if you just get a band who's just hanging out and you start throwing shit at them, like
They'd be like, what the fuck are you doing?
so I think it comes back to what do we want out of this before that question can get properly
To
addressed.
me, that speaks to building a relationship of a certain type to obtain.
Trust.
Yeah,
You gotta-
You can't just throw something
you-
at someone then be okay with it. Like,
Yeah.
Well, he's
they
been
have
put
an
in there to do a
understanding-
job.
They have an understanding though. Like he took them off. Like Burt McCracken was on the streets. Like he found their They sent him a demo. He was homeless at the time. He's like, I'm flying you to California. We're recording
Really?
an album together. Yeah.
Weren't they
So-
out of Mormon country?
Oh, Utah.
Utah?
Yeah.
He lives in Sydney now.
Yeah. But anyway, that's a relationship that they had built to
Okay.
allow him to be able to throw shit at him to get a product for the album. I don't know.
Yeah. I've never thought of myself as the arbiter of taste or chief commissioner of the taste police.
Yeah.
I know what I like, and that's purely as a consumer of music. I know what I like, and it can vary from the sublime to the ridiculous, and it always, one of the most common answers I give to a lot of questions is it depends. Yeah, some days certain things just rock my world, and on other days that same thing might not quite tickle my giggle pin in the same way. But in the context of my job, I have to be. I don't think true objectivity exists. I think everything is subjective, but I've got to be able to put my professional hat on, and I think in terms of, is this a record that I would buy with my own money or not? And there's still a lot of stuff I like and I get into, but I wouldn't necessarily, if I heard it out, go, fuck, what's this? I need to get this.
Yeah.
And there are times I do things where I don't fully get it, but I don't allow that to get in my way. Then it's like I got to put on my professional hat on and go, okay, I know how to work with sonics and I know how to make improvements. I know how to enhance things. But sometimes if I get into something that, there are times though where I will work on something that I really don't, and that usually reverts around one style of music that I don't completely get. And sometimes if the production's really amazing, I can work with it or do something. And other times I kind of go, you know what, I need to refer this to someone else. And that's with that real, like death metal, grindcore, black metal. That is not really my jam. And it's not that I wouldn't do it, but I would be more inclined to refer that to someone who I know is a bit more thing. Within our studio, for example, we got guys like Adam Dempsey, who is particularly good and has a particular sensitivity and sensibility when it comes to anything that's organic. It's acoustic, it's rootsy, jazzy. He's a jazz drummer, right? Now, not to say that I can't do records like that. Of course I can. But if someone called in and said, hey, we're a jazz trio and I've never met them, I'd say, hey, awesome. I've got a guy here who I want you to speak to first.
Yeah.
Because if it was my money, I'd be seeing him, right? Knowing what I know.
Yeah.
And at least that gives them that first offer of refusal, right? And if they still want to do it for whatever reason, that's great. Sometimes I was talking to Ben Wicks and Bruce Roulette the other day, and he's been working with Dempsey a lot too. And he said, look, I've got a new series come out, and I've decided I want to take a different approach because I want to go outside the boundaries. All this blues and all this stuff sounds the same. I want to actually make blues or work on a record that's got some attitude. And, because that's my thing. I'm the guy that I'm not... I can be transparent, but I tend to push things a bit. I tend to put a little bit of my own kind of shtick on it. And that's my style, when it comes to rock records or dance records, anything that's kind of a bit more attitude, a bit more in your face, that's my thing, And so I can be, I tend to be not even heavy-handed, but I'm not overly polite, shall we say?
Yep.
When but that's what people want sometimes, and that's what they're after. If they're asking for something that's a bit more laid back, a little bit more polite, and a little bit more, watch the P's and Q's.
Understated. Yep.
I can do that, and there are times where that's obvious the case. Like I said, the job for me is to hear things and just go, okay, that's what it needs.
That's what it sounds like.
And we'll do a thing. But I always appreciate people who will come from a particular genre and they will go, you know what, we want to take a different approach. We want to actually push the boundaries. We want to, Mike Ellington's another guy whose new album's coming out soon. Same thing. I mean, and he's taking big risks with this album because even songwriting-wise and the way he's going about, doing this record, he's going, oh, shit, I might alienate a few people, but I may pick a few along the way.
Yeah, I love that approach. I think it's important to always challenge yourself with something that's a little bit outside the box, whether that's a certain approach to songwriting, certain approach to mixing a snare a specific way, or I think it's important that every time you do something, you do it a little bit differently to see what the results are, because you never know what can become part of your arsenal. And I do that when I watch people. I'm watching, the greats, watching them, how they deconstruct their mixes. I'm like, fuck yeah, I wouldn't have never thought of miking a snare drum that way, So I like to always think of, it doesn't have to be too different, baby steps, because then you'll find that place where it's,
But even just that thought of, cool, let's just be slightly different, like being open to that idea, I think is what leads to people not being a watered down version of something else. Because even just that, all right, I'm happy to slightly alter or slightly change things, just means you've got that open mindset. Whereas opposed to, okay, cool, this is the clicky sound that all the fucking bands have on their kick, so this is what we're going to use because it's super safe. And I think especially when you have someone like Triple J, which holds such a big fucking force in the industry of what people want to get played on, they always look to this, oh man, is this going to get on Unearthed, or is this going to do this? Once you have someone that's, in the public scene as a curator of that fucking capacity, that's when you have a lot of bands, you just ended up being a watered down version of what they're hearing because they're afraid to just go, oh, let's be a little bit different. Because they go, fuck, I haven't heard this being played before and I wanted to get played, and then they sit inside themselves rather than just going, fuck it, let's just be weird. Let's just experiment.
Just be you. Just be you. Don't be afraid to be you, because you are that unique expression. And I remember I did a video that went viral years ago on that actual topic where, there was one particular week, 3 days in a row, where the question was asked, well, do you think Triple J will play it? And I got annoyed, not necessarily at them, but I just said, well, it doesn't matter. Why? I understand why it matters in the context of, they're tastemakers, but even if you got played on Triple J once or twice, whatever, it's great to get the exposure, but it doesn't mean that they're going to become megastars overnight. And it's a funnel. Every week, they get inundated with so much stuff, and there's so many gatekeepers now. So you don't know. You're at the mercy of necessarily the actual decision maker, but the one or two or three stages that goes through before it gets there.
Not to mention his friends, and then they're fucking all the little backdoor deals that happens in the industry, so that this person, because it still fucking happens.
Absolutely. So. And besides that, with the way things go in terms of what gets released today, a lot of my clients usually will drop a single fairly quickly, but an album or an EP, usually there's a bit of time that lapses. So, right, and everything, and there's a certain cycle that's not always predictable. So right now we're into a certain kind of vibe. People are trying to catch that wave. By the time their release comes out, that may be old hat or on the way out, and then this lull of like, okay, what's the next kind of thing, or you know what I mean? There's a state of flux, and it's in those moments where people are kind of looking for that thing. When something comes along that goes, fuck. How awesome is this? And then that becomes the new thing. And off we go again. And you can't predict that lull, but you know that there is a cycle. You know that there is a place. So the constant is, just be true to yourself, be true to your art, do what, because you're going to be happier making it. And even if it doesn't, quote unquote, make it in that respect, you're always going to have a great sounding record that years to come, when you're old and fat in your eastern suburbs home, reminiscing about the old times. You can pull out your old CD
and be proud of it.
But play and go, you know what, I'm really proud of this, and this was a timestamp and a document and it's something you can journal and think, and I think that's just important as anything else, because process is everything.
I had a funny analogy is when I used to work at Liquorland, and this was my creative mind at play at the most boring workplace possible. We used to have to put up displays for wine or whatever, or for slabs or whatever, and they were always like, it has to be straight, it has to be here, it has to be 4x4, it has to be 5x5, it has to be exact like that.
Yeah.
And my mindset is, if I'm walking into a place and everything is neatly in line,
And uniform.
I won't know which one to pick.
Yeah.
I'll end up picking the one that I trust or that I'm used to. But if I see something that's slightly off or that has something where it
Some
shouldn't
kind of
be, I'm
anomaly
gonna be
or
like,
missing
that's
from
weird.
it, like-
I'm
Yeah.
going to be like, oh, what's that? You know? And that translates to music as well. Like, if you're playing the exact same music as everyone else or everything that's on Triple J, you're trying to sound exactly like that, you're going to get lost. But if you're just different enough that you're introducing this new element that people haven't heard, there is a very good chance that they're going to be like, fuck, I haven't heard this before. This sounds like that, but it doesn't. It's new. It's like, it's fucking cool. You know?
I've got one layer deeper to go on that. So again, even from that like consumer habits point of view, if that consumer walked in and they saw that thing was a little bit different, if they knew that it was fabricated for them, you'd lose it. And that's the same with music. If you try to make something that's a little bit off because it's not genuinely you,
Yep.
that will come out in translation. But on the opposite, if you're just a little bit left or a little bit whatever, but it's just a fucking genuine representation of you,
Yeah.
people get attracted to that. And when you have these times of flux where there isn't something that's kind of hot or the sound's kind of dropped, what cuts through that bullshit is genuine. Like Cardi B's voice. If you listen to Cardi B's voice, you'd be like, okay, she's not going to be a fucking rapper. Guess what? She broke a lot of fucking records. Billie Eilish, you listen to that, they're like, there's a lot of traditional things where you're like, oh, that's not going to cut through. But there was no bullshit. This is exactly them. This is exactly Cardi B. You get exactly fucking her on every record as you do on her Instagram stories. Like, she's not putting that up because she's like, well, this is what I have. That's fucking her.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
in those states of kind of flux, just the more genuine and authentically you, fucking like, you know, warts and all, be that little bit fucking weird and go that place that maybe like, should I not? That's what cuts through, because people, they see it and they're like, whoa, this is different, but it's true. It's real. You know, if they thought that, oh man, this is different, but the shop steward set it up, so what? Then like you've lost them. If they go, this is different because all the customers before have bought this bottle and I don't know what it is, so I'm going to go there. Like that's the organics drawing you in.
And just remember, it's more important to be a step ahead than miles ahead, because people also, it's hard for Joe Punter to get his head around anything that's too forward or too progressive, and it's funny because as someone that grew up in the club scene, knew a lot of DJs, worked a lot of club music, especially back in the 90s. I'd worked a lot of people that were like, at the cutting edge of stuff, and it was considered the weird shit of the day. And and 3-4 years later, sure enough, it became a thing. So and I have respect for people who want to do that. That's their shtick. But you don't have to be that far ahead of the curve. I think. Just enough, you said, to create enough differentiation for people to go, oh, this is a bit different, and it gets their attention. Like your stack of slabs, it's like, oh, that caught my eye. What the fuck's that?
Yeah, exactly.
It's enough to at least take you there.
Yeah, it's probably going to taste similar to another beer, but it's going to.
But it's done. But it's done the job. It's done the job.
exactly.
It's woken you out of your fucking coma.
Yeah.
And taking you to something different.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's breaking the circuit, and that's what we really need to do. Is just how do we be that domino that just tips enough force to create a chain reaction.
It's good to trust yourself in those situations.
Oh, absolutely,
as well.
and we don't do that, and we need to do more of that. And I had a recent experience where I had a download of like, back yourself, motherfucker. Like it's always good to ask, but really when we ask too many times, we're thinking, we're asking because we're being polite, or we're being professional, or we're being cognizant of people's feelings, and that's all true. But underneath, for the most part, it's fear. The fact that we're not able to back ourselves, we're not in tune with our gut, we're not really tapping into that. We know. I mean, deep down, we fucking know. That's why they say advice is confirmation to the answer you already know, but deep down, just don't have the balls to fucking,
do it anyway.
Yeah, to accept it.
And people can see when you have, not arrogance, but confidence, If you're
sure.
like at the expense of everyone else, fuck you, I know what I know.
Well, fuck
people are going to be like, I'm going to steer clear of this person because they're scaring me.
Yep.
But if you're like, I am so confident that this is going to work, or I'm going to go down this path because I really trust myself and my abilities, then consistency will eventually lead you to that place that
it's an
will
energy.
pay off.
It's an energy stream.
Yeah.
People feel that from people.
Yep,
There is
100%.
people are, I believe, as professionals, if one thing they're buying into or they're hoping for, what they want to get for their hard earned is confidence. They do. It's like if you're sick and you go to a surgeon, you want to know that the surgeon. I mean, now we're not doing brain surgery, but for people, we're talking about people's careers, and people put a lot of time and money and to raise money to make these records,
Yep.
even if they are, just high level enthusiasts. Nonetheless, they're expecting some value in return for what they're putting out there. And one of the things that people want is that they want your confidence in what you're doing, also your investment and your in an interest in what they're doing. So it's and that just is an energy and a feeling. And you're right. I think there's a fine line between being arrogance and confidence, and that sometimes people can misinterpret those things. But I think it's your energy and the way you carry yourself and the way you deal with people, and people are going to feel that shit. They're going to know it. They're just going to know that this guy knows what he's on about. This guy or this gal is going to be is going to be there. They're going to be right in there with me. They're going to be in the trenches, and they're going to see it through and make sure that at the end of the day, we're going to come out with something that's really fucking super special and be just as happy, because as professionals, us guys, we rely on other people's success because their success is ours. Yes. So we are invested in that, and we want things to work well, and we're happy to go that little extra mile because we're happy to do so, because ultimately when things work really well, it's good juju for us in terms of word of mouth, which is the best advertising in the world. Yes. You can have all the social media algorithms and all the Kerwin Ray fucking qualifications and fucking Instagram, fucking best mates with fucking, fucking Berg, what's his face at Facebook, and have the back key to all the fucking servers and shit. But really, man, nothing works as well as someone coming to you where they already they come here to Marshall Street. They don't. You don't need to sell. Oh, come and check us out, because my mate came here and he was blown away. He was so fucking happy. Loved what he got. Thought you guys were fucking dope. Sorry, I don't use that word often, but I have to. Someone said to me, "You should use that word." Of course, dude, that's not how I speak. I'm 57. I'm not a fucking hip hop fucking b-boy, y'all. Right? Anyway, sorry, I digress. But they'll come, and this is the feedback you're going to get. So when they come in the door, it's just a matter of just you two meeting and them actually just reaffirming what they've been told. In fact, they want it to be that way because their mate told them, and they trust their mate. They've heard for themselves. So it becomes a very organic and a really nice experience. Yep. And so that word of mouth is so critical.
Yep.
So critical.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I agree. Well, that was a pretty good fucking session, I reckon. What do you reckon? Any final things to add there, Tones?
Just love you guys. You're fucking awesome. Love your audience. You're awesome. Love doing this podcast. It's great having you on. I'm almost tempted to fucking say we should do this all. No, but it's great. It's great. I think it's always nice to have someone else on the podcast to bring in their perspective on things, and it creates a different dialogue. And I'm also interested as well because, despite my age and experience, I really enjoy not just so much even the company as someone younger, because I'm not trying to regain my youth, but, to talk with people and engage with people who are doing it, within their culture, within their scene, getting it direct from the horse's mouth, not just kind of reading about it or whatever. And so I'm always interested and fascinated to find out about, what makes your mind tick? What is it, how is it that you work? What goes on in your world? Because things are always constantly moving and changing and evolving. So I like to be open-minded and open to all kinds of input from people who are doing it, and particularly guys who like yourselves who are in it. You're doing it day to day. You're not fly-by-nighters or just enthusiasts to, just taking up, your mum's, your mum's caravan in the backyard and having a bit of a fuck around. You know what I mean? So this has been a great podcast. I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, mate.
No
Pleasure, mate.
problem.
And keep up the good work, Stu, because one day I will have your babies.
I'll be looking forward to that day. My
Good on-
partner might have something to say about it, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens, eh? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. As we always say, please be nice to each other, but more importantly, be nice to yourselves. We love you, and we'll see you on the next one.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.